I'm Spencer Mazik, and joining me now is Mark Seneca. He is a private equity and M&A partner at Oric, who, along with his team, represented Instagram in its billion-dollar acquisition by Facebook. Mark co-led the team that hammered out the deal in a single weekend. Welcome, Mark. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So, Mark, first, can you tell us, how did you come to represent the mobile photo sharing app in its blockbuster deal with Facebook last year?
Well, my partner, Steve Venuto, who is one of the partners in our Silicon Valley office and our emerging companies practice, ultimately was representing Instagram in its general corporate representation. And my role in the firm predominantly is to support our emerging companies practice with the mergers and acquisitions specialty. And so when our clients reach a liquidity event or an exit transaction, I am brought in to lead the deal and to execute on the transaction. And so once there was noise being made about a potential sale to Facebook, Steve brought me in to lead the deal.
And as I mentioned, negotiations only took a weekend from Good Friday to Easter Sunday. So what accounted for the speed of the deal?
Well, it's a bit funny. You know, a lot of executives and entrepreneurs think that the norm is to lock everyone in a room over 48 hours and hammer out a deal in that time. That really isn't the norm. Normally, from start to finish, a transaction is negotiated, diligence is done, and signing occurs within about a 30-day to 45-day period. The lawyers, when they called us in to do the transaction on the Thursday before Easter weekend, were a bit apologetic, and they were apologetic because on some prior deals they had accommodated Mark Zuckerberg's request to get it done in a weekend and preconditioned him to think that that was the norm. And so going forward, Zuckerberg apparently uses the speed of the transaction and that as a bargaining chip to dictate terms and use that as a bone to throw to the target company to incent them to accept the terms and move quickly. So it was really a function of the conditioning of Mark Zuckerberg in terms of that experience, but also just the general market concern that is attendant to every deal, and time being the enemy of all deals, and not wanting interlopers to come in and the like. Those were also considerations in this transaction.
I love that has become Mark Zuckerberg's expectation to get deals done in just a weekend. So what was the toughest thing about getting the deal done so quickly?
Well, probably the toughest thing is dealing with family and friends that are coming in that weekend and having to disappoint them again in terms of the type of work that we do. So that you know, once they're conditioned to understand that this is a weekend that we've got to grind through, things seem to fall in place. Also, just by necessity, you know, there are parts of the process that are short-circuited when you're doing a deal that fast. There can only be so much diligence that is done. There can only be so much negotiation. And so in many respects, the faster deals are somewhat easier because both parties understand that you can't negotiate to the nth degree, and everyone is cooperative in terms of trying to meet that deadline.
So, Mark, tell me this. Why was Zuckerberg so keen on acquiring Instagram? Did he view the company as a real threat to Facebook?
I don't think it was so much as him viewing it as a threat to Facebook, but rather it's satisfying some real strategic imperatives for them. One of the things that was important and that always captures, in my understanding of Mark Zuckerberg's approach to Facebook and targets that he acquires, is just the growth rate in terms of acquiring users. And Instagram was on a very nice trajectory in terms of its user base and growing very rapidly. The other piece of it that was very attractive was, as I understood it, Facebook was trying to strategically figure out how to expand into the mobile marketplace, and Instagram was designed to penetrate the mobile market in terms of its photo sharing app and using that photo sharing as a way for users and social networking to grow over time. And so that strategic imperative, I think, was very important. I think also the third component was just the quality of Kevin Systrom and his team, and them wanting to have that management team on the Facebook bandwagon. A lot of folks scratch their heads and say, how can a team of about 12 employees that have been at it for less than 3 years, I think it may have been only 2 years, garner such a valuation, $1 billion valuation, as they did? Yeah, and it was really a function of those strategic imperatives, I think, that motivated that valuation.
Yeah, many people were surprised by the valuation, by the offer. But before Facebook made its offer, were there any other offers out there to buy Instagram?
I think that they had some overtures from other competitors in the marketplace. Nothing that materialized into a firm offer, and so I think at the time, Instagram certainly was in a go-it-alone strategy, continuing to keep their heads down and to move forward with the growth and development of their business. Of course, when they get overtures from parties in the marketplace, they are open to hearing about those and to maintaining those relationships, and that's how they operated their business when Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook came in with kind of a preemptive, blow it out of the water type of offer.
So, Mark, according to reports, there was an offer from Twitter, but I guess Instagram didn't view that offer as being formal or legitimate.
Yeah, that's right. I'm not sure so much of whether it would be legitimate, having any pejorative connotation relative to Twitter being a viable acquisition partner, but it was just that it never ripened into a formal offer that they could necessarily act on.
So after the deal had been reached between Facebook and Instagram, what other legal hurdles did the companies have to get over before closing?
The biggest hurdle was antitrust review. Given the size of the deal, they had to make a filing with the Department of Justice under the Hart-Scott-Rodino Act. And if there is no further review, that typically expires in 30 days. If the government wants to scrutinize the transaction for antitrust reasons, they make a second request, and oftentimes that second request and the analysis that they do can take many months. And that occurred in this transaction. It also prompted some renegotiating of some of the terms of the deal, because one of the key drivers from the target company's perspective was ensuring that the deal consideration that was denominated in stock would be freely tradable before the year end, because the target shareholders were concerned about the change in the tax rates and potentially having leakages in the value of their stock due to changes in capital gains rates.
Yeah, the deal didn't close until September of last year, and at that time, what was the value of the deal for Instagram?
I think my recollection is that the total value had fallen from about $1 billion nominally based on the metrics that they used at the time of signing the deal to about somewhere in the neighborhood of $750 million. And that was just a result of where the stock price went, given that it was a fixed stock deal as opposed to a deal in which a given amount of value denominated in stock would be floating based on the stock price at closing.
And today it seems as though Mark Zuckerberg has kept his promise to the company. Instagram still operates relatively freely, relatively independently within Facebook. But do you know how much its user base has grown within the last year?
I don't have those statistics, but it was certainly one of the tenets of the transaction that they would take that operational tact going forward and leave a fair amount of the autonomy with the original Instagram team, and it's good to hear that that has been implemented.
Yeah, and many people, because of the size of this deal, have been quick to compare it to Yahoo's recent acquisition of Tumblr. But are the deals similar, Mark?
You know, I'm not aware of what the actual terms are of the Tumblr deal. I would imagine that the deals are fairly similar in terms of just the legal structure. It's a fairly well-worn path in terms of how these deals are structured. I don't know whether, if they had a stock component, whether it was a floating price valuation, unlike the Facebook deal. But certainly, the Instagram deal opened the gates for early stage startups really garnering those types of valuations. It was curious that we represented Facebook back in their early days, Steve Venuto, and I was involved in discussions early on in which Facebook was being suited by Yahoo, and were offering comparable types of valuations at that point, and all of us were scratching our heads and saying, based on that transaction, which was kind of unheard of in the startup community, Mark Zuckerberg would have instantly been worth about $300 million. Mm-hmm. Well, and he was fairly ambivalent about the transaction at the time. In hindsight, he's the genius and we're the fools.
Yeah, he's definitely made out much better under this circumstance. And for Tumblr and also Yahoo and Instagram, the deals being the same or different, might the motives actually be different for each business?
Yeah, I think so. I think both companies have their own unique strategic issues in terms of holes that they're trying to fill through their acquisition activity. In the case of Facebook, obviously, which I'm much more familiar with, it was really the mobile platform and the acquisition of users and talent. I think in Yahoo's situation, it's very similar, although they may be looking for more incremental content as opposed to a mobile solution. And in every deal, the talent and the users are of premium importance.
Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see, but thanks so much for joining us today to talk about the very highly publicized acquisition of Instagram. We really appreciate it, Mark.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
For more information on this or other topics, subscribe to BloombergLaw.com. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you for joining us. Bye, everybody.